In my last X-Men video, we looked at the Astonishing X-Men, Cyclops and Emma Frost. Today, we're taking a look at Monet St, Croix, also known as M, and Jonathan Starsmore, also known as Chamber. Do these Generation X figures smell like teen spirit, or do they just plain stink? Stick around as we go back to the 90s. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off with the packaging, and we have our soon-to-be phased-out, but not soon enough, windowless boxes. X-Men logo down here, digital render in the middle, character name up top, X logos at the tippy top. Reminder that these are both from the Chod Wave. List on the side of all the other figures you'll need to build them. On the side we get some very nice comic artwork, and on the back we get some more digital renders showing us what comes with the figures. Did you ever see any of those Marvel Comics alternate covers that look like action figures inside of a box? I wonder if I would have liked the windowless boxes if they just made them look more like that. Maybe I'm just too old and set in my ways, but I look at a picture on a box and my mind does not register that an action figure is in there. As has sadly become standard for Marvel Legends, for packaging, I'm giving these two half a point. Moving on to presentation, and both figures stand at about 6¼ inches. Not to beat a dead horse, but getting Chamber out of the package is another reason why we need to go back to box windows. Looking at this digital render, and it looks like the fire is a solid piece with some bright yellow painted in the middle, whereas this is translucent and has a very different effect, especially when you backlight them. Granted, I think it would have looked better if they cast it in yellow translucent plastic with white highlights, but while I can't speak for you, I personally like this more than the digital render, and I really like that it's one solid removable piece. But we'll get back to that during playability. As you'd expect, there's a lot of reuse, but it's smart reuse. Chamber's lower half comes from the standard suited body, right down to the shoes. Otherwise, this is a new torso, lots of texture and striation in there, and near as I can tell, this leather jacket's new. I'm pleased to see that Hasbro went in and painted the buttons and zippers, as well as the buckles. Granted, these are things they should be painting, but these days I don't really give them the benefit of the doubt. I've already commented on the fire, but I do really like the bit of his face that we see. It's sculpted well, and I really love the paint job. Really good intensity. Moving over to Monet, and this is one I was a bit on the fence on when I first saw the pictures. I thought that her head looked a bit small for her body, and getting it in hand, I still think it kind of is. But since this is a comic character and not an MCU figure, it doesn't bother me that much. And I do really like this head sculpt. This is a very pretty face sculpt, and I think they've done a nice job of painting it, especially the eyes. I really like the swoopiness of the hair, and that it's more of a matte finish instead of being glossy. As for the rest of the body, they did the same thing as they did with Quake, where they gave her a new upper torso with a zipper, even though technically it should go all the way down. And I use Quake as an example because this is otherwise the same figure. To Hasbro's credit, the shoulder pads are new, but they're a separate piece tucked into the joint. These Lego-looking gauntlets are new, but they're just slid over the forearm. The belt, surprisingly, is new as well. I say surprising because I thought it was just going to be a reuse of the one that came with the Uncanny X-Men 275 sets, but that's actually not the case. And if there was any doubt that this is from a 90s comic, the calves and boots are new as well. It's bubbly to match her personality. If you read the comic, you know that's a joke because she's actually very serious. Despite some corner cutting, I am overall pretty happy with what Hasbro's done here. There is some reuse, but they're mostly new, and in my opinion, they look pretty good. For presentation, I'm giving this Generation X duo 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and aside from the middle, they have the same articulation scheme. They also both have heads that hinder articulation. For Monet, it's her long, luxurious hair. For Chamber, it's his fire. Because of that, he can't really look up or down. That said, Monet can look side to side, and so can Chamber. Moving on down, an M shoulder armor does not get in the way for arm articulation, but Chamber can only raise his arms of this much, which is pretty pitiful. Be that as it may, both figures have bicep swivel, pinless, double-jointed elbows with really great bends. I'm particularly impressed with Monet given her bulky forearm. It does, however, get in the way of her swivel hinge wrists. Chamber, on the other hand, has no trouble in that department. Moving to the middle, and Monet has a diaphragm joint. Her hair does get in the way of arching back, but she can hunch forward this far. She also gets a good amount of tilt and twist. Chamber, by contrast, has an ab crunch and a waist swivel. He can't really arch back because of the jacket, but he does have a great hunch forward and and twist. Below the belt, and both figures have ball-jointed hips. Monet can kick 90 degrees and spread pretty wide. Chamber can kick just about 90 degrees and spread not as wide. In fact, the range is pretty much equal with his arms. Moving on down, they both have thigh cut, double jointed knees. M gets extra brownie points for being pinless. And all the way down, they have ankles that can hinge, extra groove in the back for M by the way, and pivot. Long hair is historically one of the main things that hinders action figure articulation, or in this case a head full of fire. Otherwise, they have all the range I could want or need, so for posability, these two get 1 whole point. Moving on to playability, and in terms of accessories, I'm honestly kinda conflicted. Monet has a pair of fists and a pair of gesturies, but her powers are super intelligence, strength, and flight. Unless Hasbro's gonna start giving us flight stands, I don't really know what else she could have included. As for Jonathan, he also comes with a pair of fists and a pair of gesturies. As for his mutant abilities, well, you're looking at it. Similar to M, I don't really mind that he doesn't come with any other unique accessories, especially since both of them do at least come with build-a-figure pieces. M comes with Chad's left leg, and Chamber comes with his left arm. I guess you could say these two can't do anything right. That said, Chamber does have one extra hidden feature: head swaps. How about a black costume era Peter Parker? Or for that matter, Cletus Cassidy. Speaking of deranged redheads, and the alternate arcade looks pretty cool, how about a civilian Scott Summers? This one's a bit low and a bit big, but it still would make for a pretty good civilian. Same with this alternate Steve Rogers. Although honestly, this one doesn't really work as well. And one really cool idea I've seen online is people using this alternate head that came with Magic to make their very own Ghost Rider. If you really want to commit, you'll have to repaint it. You'll also need some new hands, but I gotta admit, this is a lot of fun. As for M, the only swap I was interested in is Emma Frost, mainly to get a kinda sort of idea what Husk might look like. But playability is more than just head swaps and build-a-figure pieces. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Of course, we have to start with Professor Xavier, and since it's the 90s, we've got to put him in his hover chair. Here we have Banshee from the Uncanny X-Men 275 multi-pack. He of course served as a leader of the team. Believe it or not, he actually was rocking the blue and yellow at that time in the comic. Speaking of leadership, and that brings us to Emma Frost. This one's from the Hellfire Club box set, and the Astonishing X-Men version also from this wave. Hopefully Hasbro will give us this version soon. Also from this wave is the Astonishing X-Men Cyclops, but heading back to the 90s, and here's the Jim Lee version from the Love Triangle 3-pack, Jean Grey from the Love Triangle 3-pack, and Tiger Stripe Wolverine also from the Love Triangle 3-pack. For the second-in-command field leader of the X-Men, and here's Storm, the lovable beast who's been thoroughly ruined by modern comics, the retro card version of Rogue, and the retro card version of Remy LeBeau, Gambit. Rounding out the 90s animated series team is Jubilee, who's also an important founding member of Generation X, but for a few other heroes who are still pretty big in the comic at the time, and here we have Psylocke, Nightcrawler, who's my favorite member of the X-Men, here's Colossus, another one of my favorites, and his kid sister Ileana, also known as Magic. Moving over to the villains, and here's Magneto, the Master of Magnetism, the insidious Nathaniel Essex, also known as Mr. Sinister, Cyber, who's also pretty synonymous with the 90s, and the Marvel Select 1990 Sabretooth. Rumor has it we're getting a new Legends version of this next year. In the spirit of the 90s, I thought I'd bring out the animated series style retro card Apocalypse, and the more cartoonishly toned 80 Years Juggernaut. That said, for the 90s X-Men villain, and here we have Onslaught. For a relative scale comparison, here's Chamber and Monet with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. Given the nature of these characters' powers, I'm pretty happy with the accessories that they come with, but I'm even more happy with head swap potential. For playability, I'm giving Chamber and Monet 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. The Chad Wave is hitting stores now and retails for $24.99 a pop. It might not be 90s prices, but given the new parts and also accessories, I'm okay with that. For price, I'm giving these two 1 whole point for a grand total of 4.5 out of 5. Are you a fan of Generation X, and if so, what characters do you hope they make next? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.